Welcome to City Council Chronicles. Somewhere out there, a city council meeting is happening, and you're not watching it, but I am. I'm Michael Carlick, and you're listening to the City Council Chronicles podcast. For City Council meeting reviews, visit councilchronicles.com. Last week, I reviewed the Omaha, Nebraska City Council meeting, where one citizen was a wee bit angry that the city wasn't cutting its own grass. Agnes, I believe we have the audio of that.
Has the whole world gone crazy? Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules?
Also, last week on the podcast, I released another special episode of the Best Thing, Worst Thing project. I went to Raymore, Missouri, and talked to 5 people about good schools, political discord, and everything in between. Take a look back on the podcast and listen to the whole story. On today's episode, I talked to Lee Feldman, the city manager of Fort Lauderdale. He was also the city manager of North Miami and Palm Bay. That's more Florida than most people can handle. And for sure, he has seen his share of surly council meetings. He told me that, yes, it may look like council members are not paying attention at meetings, but the reason why? Well, it may surprise you. Stay tuned. Episode 21, the music is by bensound.com. Okay, you are the city manager of Fort Lauderdale. So, sir, my first question to you is, how many wet t-shirt contests have you judged?
I have judged none.
None? I'm sorry, I thought that was the main industry of Fort Lauderdale.
No, actually, spring break, as you may think of, has long gone from Fort Lauderdale, and I don't know that I could point to one place in the city that has any sort of adult entertainment like that.
Well, sure, I wouldn't expect you to, but when did spring break leave Fort Lauderdale?
So back in the 80s, the city fathers back then felt that spring break had gotten a little out of control.
Okay.
And the Daytona Beach was heavily recruiting spring break, and the city fathers and mothers at that time felt that they wanted to see the beach evolve to something different, and so spring break was actually discouraged and ultimately moved away.
Gotcha. Are there any regrets about having all the scantily clad co-eds leave Fort Lauderdale for Daytona?
Well, actually, I think Daytona Beach subsequently had their own issues, and shortly after we did, they discouraged spring break as well.
That is a shame. But be that as it may, can you think of anything you've done as Fort Lauderdale's city manager that you think no other city manager in the country might have done?
I'll tell you one that you may find a little humorous. We have in Florida, when you have a quasi-judicial item, you have to be sworn in to give testimony.
Right.
Our previous process gave you a little orange sticker to indicate that you were sworn in, and one of the things I encouraged the city clerk to do was to replace that that little orange sticker with a sticker that says "I love Fort Lauderdale," and so now everybody who's speaking at the podium is wearing a "I love Fort Lauderdale" sticker. So I'm not sure anybody else in the country has done that yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect Reno to have stickers that say "I love Fort Lauderdale," but have you ever seen anyone just peel off their sticker in the meeting and throw it down and say, "I don't love Fort Lauderdale"?
Not one.
No one. Okay, that's good. Now, I found a video from 6 years ago when you were city manager of Palm Bay. And this was not a regular city council meeting. This was a 6-hour meeting for the city council to break a deadlock on contract negotiations with the city's firefighters. Now, this was still the time of the recession, and you stood up there telling the city council, look, we've either got to cut services, raise taxes, or change the employee benefits. But then some of the firefighters got up, and I want to listen to what a few of them had to say.
I think it's shameful what you're doing. Absolutely shameful. Absolutely no reason to do what you're doing. Shame on all of you, and most of all, Mr. Feldman.
On 9/11, we had the most horrendous thing ever happen to this country. It wasn't city managers and assistant city managers or council members that rushed into fires. You made them a promise. Live up to it. If you can't live up to it, then cut the unnecessary waste and fat in this city. Start with the city manager who's useless or his assistants. I don't see you trying to cut his pension benefits. I don't see you asking to cut his pay. I see him getting a raise every year. But you want them to take a cut? How dare you?
When people are saying that stuff to you in public, cut your pay, you don't care about us, what is it that you want to say to them at the meeting but can't?
Well, what I want to say and what I do say, so I'm not sure I'm ever in a position where I can't say, is that, look, we value the work and effort of every single employee that works in the organization. And everybody contributes differently. But you can't have a city of just one type of employee. There's a lot to go around. And we want to make sure that we, as a city, as an employer, pay fairly for a fair day's work. I mean, I remember, sometime around that time, these anonymous blogs and newspapers started showing up, and somebody blogged that I had gotten a huge raise, which was not the truth, and I got a call from my mom. She was yelling at me about, how dare you take a raise when you're, telling others that, they need to have changes. And I had to explain to her that just because it's in the paper or just because it's being said publicly doesn't mean that's actually true.
So on that subject of misinformation, when will you jump in at a council meeting if a commenter is saying something or a council member is saying something that's not 100% accurate?
It depends how the meeting is being run. If we have the time for public comment and folks are allowed to say whatever they want to say on there, and then if it comes back to the commission and I think it was grossly misstated, I'll get the attention of the mayor and try to correct the record as best as I can. Mm-hmm. Same thing, even if a commissioner makes a comment, I think it's incumbent upon me to at least make sure that the information being presented and discussed and argued is the best information as I know it. But you also want to be respectful.
If you retired tomorrow and I came in to fill your job as city manager, what is the one thing you would tell me for how to handle the city commission meetings and we're pretending that I have experience in this exercise.
I would tell you to make sure you know what the issues are that are coming up on the agenda. If you don't know a specific piece of information that's being looked for, either turn to your staff to answer the question, or just tell the commission you don't know the answer and you've got to get back to them. Okay. We always want to impress our bosses by having all the information in hand, but the more complex the organization, the harder it is to do that. And if you can't, then don't.
I suppose in theory it's better to say, I'll get back to you on stuff that you don't know. But, when you're the city manager, the commissioners expect you, and maybe it's a bit unfair, but to know everything about what's going on in the city. And, for example, you say, I'll get back to you very little in the meetings because you know pretty much everything.
But you'll notice how much my staff participates in the discussion. Yeah. And that's because if I don't know it, they will, and they do. I let them move forward with the information. And that's just my style.
Gotcha. Now, I noticed in your city commission meetings that some public commenters stand up there wearing T-shirts and shorts and baseball caps. And look, I know this is Fort Lauderdale and the surf is up, but do you find that a little bit too casual for City Hall?
Over the last 30 years, I've just seen a general relaxation of meetings. You can probably, and you probably, since you watch this stuff, you've probably seen some council members that wear T-shirts and ball caps and shorts to meetings.
No, not yet.
Not yet?
No.
Yeah, you'll probably find a few, especially in the older retirement oriented communities. But I think there's a casualness of it, and I'm not sure it's unique to Fort Lauderdale, though we probably have our share of it.
Yeah, I'm always curious about the farther south cities for their dress codes because, I talked to an Orlando city commissioner, and she said, I'll wear something that's sleeveless or maybe kind of a sundress, but definitely not more informal than that because it is a business meeting after all. So, I guess as long as people aren't showing up in bikinis and floppy hats, then it's acceptable for Florida.
Yeah, I've never had the bikini and big floppy hat, but I haven't seen anything really offensive.
Okay, now you all have a workshop meeting right before the regular commission meeting, and both of those can go on for 4 or 5 hours each, such that the commissioners and you can be there in a meeting for potentially 10 or 11 hours straight. Do you notice that people get more irritable with each other the longer the meetings go on?
It depends on the issue. The conference items are generally more educational, and we have a provision in our code that basically says you can't have a vote on anything prior to 6 o'clock.
Right.
So we use the workshop, the conference is really to workshop items, and then conduct the formal business of the city at 6. But occasionally we've got people that want to speak on every item, and they get that opportunity.
Right, and in watching some Fort Lauderdale Commission meetings, I've seen that the public comment can be pretty heated. Let me just play a few of the many confrontational exchanges at these meetings.
Let us sign up until you give the word, and then you yell it across the room. It's very un-American. Seems like something that you do in Germany or something like that. Why would you pick on Germany? You're just out of control. There's like a triumvirate of tyranny between you, Bruce Roberts, and Romney Ryan.
Just make it clear. I just want it to be clear.
I am trying to be.
Thank you, Jack.
Go
ahead.
This is the legacy of Jack Seiler. father of Jacqueline, husband of Susan, and father of Susan. That's how these guys name their kids after themselves, and that's a real imaginative. There's a thing called a baby book. You look, Harry, Sally, Billy, Bobby, Ray. You're showing about as imaginativeness in running the city as you did with naming your children.
I've been busy for the last 5 or 6 hours. I've been taking pictures of various combinations here, ignoring the speaker, not even looking at it, doing what the mayor's doing right now. He's on his cell phone.
Why is the city paying double for a parking space? I feel like no one is even looking up or listening to me. Is that how you respond to residents?
Okay, there was a lot in there, but let's address the point of that last woman. Now, it is true that the commissioners sometimes don't look like they're paying attention. They are talking to each other. They're looking down. Sometimes you do this as well. How accurate is this concern that the commissioners are not listening to people? And I've got to say, from watching a few meetings, to me it seems largely correct.
Well, so some of those that you played are folks that show up at every meeting and want to talk about every item and literally say the same thing over and over and over again. I mean, I could, just recognizing the voices, I can tell you. But the other thing too that I think our commissioners get a bad rap on is we have electronic agendas now, and all of our commissioners and myself use our iPads in order to look at the agenda, and so as people are speaking and referencing things, we will be looking down at the iPad to see what they're talking about. I think we get a bad rap in terms of, it looks like we're not paying attention, but I will tell you, I've sit next to the mayor, as you know, and he is as attentive as they get, because the speaker will be speaking and he'll show me what they're pointing to or referring to. So,
okay.
So, looking down, and iPads are relatively easy, so even sitting back a little and holding it, it's still what the agenda's on.
Sure, and, iPads are relatively recent. Not every city council where you've been has had them. So is there a city council you have worked with that you think did a better job of listening to and acknowledging the citizens than some of the others?
So the commission that I'm working with now, I would say, does a great job. I mean, they give everybody a chance to speak, even those that want to say the same thing over and over again on there, and even ones that want to, start talking about what they name their kids, right, which is not relevant to anything.
Mm-hmm.
They have an opportunity to speak, and I think as if individuals don't abuse it, they're paid much more attention to those that just continue to ramble on about the same thing from meeting to meeting.
Yes, and
item.
Yes, some people get up there and criticize you personally, criticize the commissioners personally. They come in every meeting, stand up every couple of minutes, insult you guys, sit down, do it again. Do you ever talk to those people in real life and try to figure out why they're so angry?
I do in the beginning.
Okay.
But when, what's the best way of saying this? When my conversations just don't make a difference anymore, I candidly don't waste my time or theirs to just get to the same discussion over and over.
Uh-huh.
I mean, one gentleman that you played on there continues to talk to me about the decision that the city commission made in 2007. Well, none of the commissioners were on the commission then, and I wasn't here. And as I tell him, we can't keep talking about a decision that was made in 2007 when this is 2017. At some point, you after a couple of years of having that same discussion, you just give up.
Okay. Are you referring to Ray Cox?
No, that's Art Sites.
Oh, Art. Okay. I've only watched a couple of meetings, but I know all these people's names, and they'll stick with me for the rest of my life. But Ray Cox is one of the frequent commenters. He sometimes signs up to speak on all or nearly all of the agenda items, and he gets 3 minutes on each. So if you've got a couple dozen items, that can add half an hour to an hour to the meeting. The mayor did kick him out once for disrespecting a police officer, but he also says some amusing things too, like this one from December 20th. And for the listeners, this is a family podcast, so if you're one of the 90% of people listening to this with the kids on the way to church, just be warned.
And we have transvestite day at the beach. And we have cross-dressers at the beach. And drag queen day at the beach. And then pre-operative transvestites that have huge breasts, but they're still male. And they're sunbathing on the beach. Civil disobedience.
You're done, Mr. Cox.
We'll destroy the city.
I don't know how we got to large-breasted transvestites.
We'll get creative, Mr. Mayor.
I get amused by you and Mr. King all the time. So, Mr. Fisher, if you could please stay on topic and not discuss large-breasted transvestites.
What other unusual moments can you think of from all your years at city council meetings?
I think that one probably, is up there.
Yeah.
After doing this for 30 years of meetings, I don't know that I can pick out, specific ones, but Mr. Cox certainly has been one that has tested the patience of not only the commission but also the neighbors that are sitting in the audience, waiting to have their chance and their item, and they get extremely frustrated by somebody who wants to monopolize the time. So you may not be aware of this, but if you look at our newspaper, the Sun Sentinel, there's a story today how Mr. Cox, after that issue with the police officer and being kicked out of the meeting, at that time he's now entered a plea deal, and he will not be attending city commission meetings, workshops, or public meetings for a year.
Oh.
On there as part of his plea.
Are you looking forward to getting out 2 hours earlier now?
Well, we still have a few others. But the other thing that we've done, and we've just had one meeting under our belt, this will be our second meeting, it sort of changed the rules on who can pull items off of our consent agenda. So now only a city commissioner can pull an item from the consent agenda, and if anybody wants to speak on the items that remain on the consent agenda, they can have 3 minutes at the beginning to talk about all the items that have not been pulled. So somebody like Mr. Cox, when he returns, or Mr. King or Mr. Seitz, will not have the ability to just pull an item off of the consent agenda to talk about it.
Uh-huh. And every city council does things differently. But Fort Lauderdale is a bit of an outlier in that I don't think I've seen another city council where anyone can speak on every single item that you're talking about that night, because obviously that can add a bunch of time to an already long meeting.
Well, it's not bad if it's not abused.
Right.
On there, but when you have people that use it as a way to abuse the system and to punish, folks who are innocently there to have their items heard, that ultimately limits it for everybody else. It's a shame when people abuse public participation like that.
If someone wants to come in and comment at a city commission meeting, how can they get your attention and most effectively make their case other than mentioning big-bosomed transvestites?
The best way to make a case is to know the issue, be able to state the fact, and it's okay to even get emotional about something if it's passionate with you. I've seen speakers, tear up because the item means so much to them. But the biggest, the most effective way is just remain civil in the discourse on there. I'm a strong believer that this is everybody's city hall and everybody's meeting, and they should have the ability to participate on there. It just needs to be civil, non-abusive, and to the point.